Today, we get to talk about 10 harsh truths that will set you free. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Financial Freedom Fast Lane. And you know the vibes. The quicker you get to your dream life, the longer you get to live it. And I'm your host, George Achimpong. So today, let me sip my coffee. Ooh, that's still hot. Because at the end of the day, the name of the show is Financial Freedom Fast Lane. And if you've been following me for any amount of years, you know that the names and titles of my podcast have evolved, right? So my very first podcast was the Legacy and Lifestyle Show. My second, same podcast, but rebranded, was the Uncensored Show. Then we decided to transition it into the Melanin Money Show, right? Which was a different podcast altogether. And then, of course, now I have my separate show, Financial Freedom Fast Lane. And whenever I'm naming my titles, it's always difficult for me, or naming my show names, it's always difficult because I want people to know the core and the crux and the essence of what I stand for and what my subject matter expertise is. But that is not the end all be all in who I am, right? I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a financial advisor, I'm a husband, I have interest in other areas. And so I always struggled with naming my show something explicitly related to finance, because it's like, man, well, will it feel weird if I talk about something outside of the scope of just like core finance? So even with this one, Financial Freedom Fast Lane, it's like, okay, Financial Freedom Fast Lane. But at the end of the day, finances are just the fuel that facilitate freedom, right? Freedom is being able to live life on your own terms. And so there's going to be other things that are important that are adjacent to money that are required in order to become free. The finances are just the subject matter expertise that I help educate you on to facilitate that freedom. That being said, the things that we're going to share today are explicit financial topics. And I know I don't have to give that disclaimer. I know that if the content is valuable, if the context is there, it makes sense. But I just wanted you guys to have that context so that you can understand why is this guy coming on here acting like he's a life coach. And it's not that I think that I am. It's like these have just been helpful things that have actually helped accelerate my journey from a financial perspective. And I figured I would do the same by sharing them with you. All right. So if you curse on a YouTube episode, do they have to change the rating? I don't know. This is going to be a real one. This is going to be a raw one, but let's get into it. All right. So the first harsh truth that we all have to come to terms with is entitlement. Entitlement. Nobody owes you shit. Nothing, right? No one owes you nothing. It doesn't matter what happened, why it happened to you. It doesn't mean that me or other people shouldn't be empathetic to that reality. But the fact is that it is what it is, right? Nobody owes you nothing. And the truth of the matter is, if you were as good as you thought you were, then you would have what you think you deserve. That's what it boils down to. If you thought you were working out as hard as you were, then you would have the body that you think you deserve. There's a very slim set of the population who, maybe due to disability or some type of illness or some type of a constraint, where they legitimately don't have the ability to improve themselves in certain areas. 9 times out of 10, if you're watching and listening to this isn't you. It doesn't mean that you don't have a limitation. It doesn't mean that you don't have something that makes it more challenging than someone who doesn't have anything. But the myth there is thinking that just because you see someone's external blessings or the things that they have, and you assuming that there's nothing else going on behind the scenes that could be weighing them down, right? You might say stuff like rich people problems, or just think that their problems don't equate to yours. And that's not fair. We all go through things, right? But the reality is, at the end of the day, nobody owes you nothing. That's what it boils down to, right? And the quicker you can realize that I get what I deserve, I get what I work for, I get what I earn. Anything other than that is grace, it's unmerited favor, but I'm not entitled to that, right? If more people could realize that you're not entitled to anything in this world doesn't owe you anything, then you could probably get to your dreams faster by simply taking that into account as a part of the recipe and getting to work. All right, hard truth number 2, circumstance. And I touched on this a little bit, right? But we all have different things going on. There is nothing special about your circumstance, no matter how much you want to believe it, especially if you live in America, right? Even with the racism that people of color deal with, right? There are even harsher circumstances that are still currently happening in other parts of the world. So I'm not saying that it marginalizes your circumstance or you're not warranted to feel how you feel, but the reality is the recipe for success isn't going to change because of your circumstance, right? If you want to bake a cake, but your stove don't get hot for real, the success of what it takes to bake a cake isn't going to change. If you can't afford all of the ingredients to make the cake, it's not going to taste the same just because you can't afford it. I'm not saying that it's right or fair that you can't afford the ingredients. I'm not saying it's right or fair that your stove is broke. But the facts are, in order to make the cake taste a certain way, there's a certain amount of ingredients that you have to have. There's a certain temperature that the cake has to be, and that's how it's going to turn out. Now, if I tell you that logically, that makes sense. Like, you wouldn't expect for the cake to taste well. You say, hey, you have to have baking powder and you have to have brown sugar in order to make this cake taste well. If you didn't include the brown sugar or sugar at all for that matter, how crazy would it sound? Like, man, I can't believe this cake ain't sweet. Why ain't it sweet? Well, I ain't really put the sugar in it for real. I ain't feel like going to the store, or I couldn't afford the sugar or whatever. My sugar expired, but the cake should still taste good, right? No, right? Like, but that's how it sounds when people have circumstances in their life and they're like, well, because this happened to me, because this isn't fair, because I don't have access to this, I should be able to still get that. Doesn't work that way. Again, there's always context, there's always nuance, there's always a subset of the population where the rules don't apply. But for you, if you're watching this, I'm pretty sure that isn't you. You're not permanently disabled. And I've even seen people who don't have arms and legs who are getting to it more than people who have all of their limbs and all of their full health, right? So even in circumstance, there are people that are still in extreme circumstance that are still getting to it. So I'm not saying it's not fair, but the circumstances aren't unique. Someone else is going through them. And even if they were unique, the reality is if you've decided that there's something that you wanted, there is an ingredient list. There is a recipe that is required to get that. And unfortunately, there's nothing the recipe can do to change. The recipe is an inanimate object in this example, right? If you want to have $1 million, you got to make enough money, don't spend too much of it, and invest the difference. Generally speaking, maybe you hit the lottery, maybe you marry rich, maybe you become a scammer. But outside of those things, this is the path and the process. If you grew up in poverty, if your mom didn't teach you about money, if you lost your job, if your business went belly up because of COVID, fair, right? All fair circumstances. But that doesn't mean that the recipe to success is going to change because of those circumstances. And that's just what you have to realize. So instead of adjusting your expectations on getting something that you can't because you don't have what it takes or aren't willing to do what it takes, then maybe you have to adjust your expectations on what you want. That's the only thing that can be adjusted. You can't adjust the requirements and the recipe required for success. All right, this is a good one. Hard truth number 3, self-sabotage, right? Self-sabotage, okay? Now, believe it or not, you can only elevate to the level of your belief system, right? So when you anchor in your mind what a success looks like, which is based upon your exposure, and there's a whole kind of science and equation behind it. Basically, in your mind, there's like a mental lever of if I'm here, I feel comfortable. If I'm here, I feel somewhat successful, right? Once you start to touch up against that, right, then what's going to happen is your progress can't break through. And if you're constantly tapping it, you're creating resistance. And so you're going to have to like behave yourself back down to the level of your comfort zone. You might like randomly jump past it. Like it might like be a glitch in the matrix and you skip it. But if your belief system doesn't match the level that you've elevated to, you're going to have to psychologically behave yourself back to the reality that your brain can comprehend, right? It's the reason why a lot of athletes or entertainers, right, end up going broke. It's because their understanding of money, their belief system around why they have it, them deserving it, etc., hasn't matched, right? Hasn't matched up with their reality. And as a result of it, they behave themselves back into the actual version of themselves that they are. They might have gotten the money in their hands, but in their mind, they're still the kid that grew up down the street who never came from money. If you don't elevate your mind and elevate your mentality and elevate your belief system to match the version of yourself that you want to become, even if you scratch the surface of that, you will self-sabotage yourself back into the reality that your brain can comprehend. That's why they say you become a millionaire before you get the money. Because once you have the identity of a person who moves like a millionaire, knows how to be a good steward over their finances, isn't impressed, right? Like this is my normal, then you're not going to do things to sabotage because that's your floor, right? Like I have this goal of like, hey, once I hit a certain target, like that's my new floor. My floor isn't zero. My floor is this. And then when I hit that target, I create a new floor, but I'm making sure that I'm elevating my belief system to truly believe that that is my floor. So maybe at one point in time, $0 in your bank account or your investment account was your floor. Then maybe it's 10,000. Then maybe it's 100,000, right? But only your belief system will determine that if you see 100,000 or 99,999, that it feels like you have went to below zero, that you've overdrafted. That's a belief system thing, right? I literally go broke investing. I literally trick myself into thinking that I don't have money because my belief system is telling me that this is my floor. But if you don't establish that, you will constantly self-sabotage yourself back into behaving a certain way. Same thing with like getting in shape, right? Like once you get to a point where it's like, ooh, this feels pretty good. This feels pretty comfortable. The reason why you have the cheat meal, the reason why you take your foot off the gas is because you have now anchored up to the level of your belief system of who you believe you are. And now you're going to behave yourself back down to something that feels more comfortable. As crazy as that sounds, that's how it works. So self-sabotage is ruining most people's success. Hard truth number 4. Nobody wants to be fat. Nobody wants to be fat. So telling yourself stuff like the summer's going to get whatever body I give it, or just acting like you don't care, or acting like it is what it is just because you've gotten older, like that's not you. That is the settled version of you. That is the I've given up on achieving this goal version of yourself. And the same thing goes for your significant other. Your significant other doesn't want somebody that's out of shape and fat. The only way they will act like they don't care is if they're unwilling to commit themselves, and it's easier for them to not hold you accountable or let you know that that's not what they like, because then it would force them to actually have to show up themselves. But nobody wants to be out of shape. Now, I'm not saying everybody wants to be a fitness model, but most people, if you ask them, they will prefer to look in the mirror and be happy and proud of the body that looks back at them. But the reality is life happens. You get out of shape a little bit. We're all guilty of this, right? Myself included. You maybe you were in shape at one point and you self-sabotage yourself a little bit. You're not in as great a shape as you wanted to be, right? But at the end of the day, if you can at least be honest with yourself that I do want better for myself, it may be hard. I might not know how I'm going to get there. It might be frustrating, but don't convince yourself and lie to yourself that you don't want better for you. And it doesn't mean that you should feel bad about your current body, but all I'm saying is you should be honest about where you are so that you can honestly make a change. If you act like, and unfortunately I see women do this more than men, but like a woman will post something and she's clearly not in shape, but her friends will be in the comments, yes, girl, slay, I see you, waist snatch. You know what y'all be saying? And y'all know daggone well that ain't the case. If you do say that it's the case, it's because one, you really don't want your friend to be great. Or two, it makes you feel better about yourself. And now you don't have to put pressure on yourself to get better if your people around you are content with settling. That's a fact. That's a microcosm of life. So whether we're talking about fitness or finances or whatever, whenever someone says money, I'm not going to steal my thunder, but like money isn't important. Okay, cool story. Tell that to the grocery store. Tell that to the leasing office. Tell that to the mortgage company. Tell that to the car company. Tell that to whoever you got to pay to live the life that you want to live. Which brings me to harsh truth number 5. Nobody wants to be broke or just have enough. They don't. Most people want to live a great life. They want to travel to see the world. They want to eat great food. They want to buy nice things. But people start to say stuff like money isn't everything, or, I don't care about money. Yes, you do. You either just are bad with money or have developed bad habits associated with money, or are unwilling to do the hard work to get rich. And as a result of it, you want to repeat rhetoric about rich people being evil and all this nonsense. You have visions in your head of places you want to go, things you want to do, people you want to help, but yet you're repeating rhetoric around not caring about money, or trying to convince yourself that you don't care because you are settling. Because it's much harder to say you don't care about money than it is to say, you know what, I got to get my financial ish together. It's much harder to say, oh, I don't really care about that stuff. The world cares about this, the world cares about that. Now, again, I'm not saying that there isn't nuance in that people do need to unravel their materialistic obsessions with the stuff. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that for the average person who says they don't care about money, right, or has some negative connotation or association with people who make it, is that they're being reminded of their own mediocrity when it comes to doing what it takes to get rich and ultimately become wealthy. Nobody wants just enough. Nobody. Nah, I'm cool, bro. I just like living an average life. I like penny pinching every time I travel. That makes it fun and exciting. Really? Let's be real. You haven't figured it out yet. Hopefully you have, or you're at least trying to, which is why you watch this channel. And I know I'm coming across a little bit aggressive or abrasive in this episode, but like, I really want y'all to get it. We are halfway through the year, and there's stuff on y'all's to-do list that was on your to-do list last month, the month before that, the year before that. When are we going to wake up and say, enough is enough? I'm finally going to do what I'm supposed to do. All right, this is a heavy one. This is a heavy one. Hard truth number 6. Most of life is not happening to you. Most of life is catching up to you. Here's what I mean by that. If you get laid off from work, from a job, that is life happening to you in that moment. But if upon being laid off from that job, if you immediately or shortly thereafter can't pay your rent, can't pay your car payment, can't pay your bills, have trouble like getting money for basic necessities, that means that life is catching up to you. Because the truth of the matter is, you've probably been working for 3, 5, 7, 10, 15 years even. I saw a meme earlier. A guy said he was working for like 30 years at this one company, right? And they just told him he wasn't getting a pension. So if you work for 10, 15 years and you get laid off, and then in 10 and 15 days, you trying to figure out how you're going to make ends meet, the math ain't mathing. Right? Like what have you been doing for over a decade, over 2 decades, over 3 decades, to where you haven't prioritized living below your means enough to put a little bit of money aside for a rainy day? You've been hearing it for years. Have an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of your living expenses. Now, here's the thing. It goes back to entitlement. Well, how can I do that? I only make 50 grand a year. Well, you have to live a lifestyle based on a person who makes 50 grand a year. Well, I'm too old to have a roommate. I'm too fly to drive a car that's paid off. Okay, well, I guess you're going to be pretty fly walking when that car gets repossessed because you don't have an emergency fund. Can we be real? So many people want to sugarcoat stuff, but aren't willing to be real, right? People spend more time planning out their vacations for the year than they do evaluating their finances. You're spending more time planning a temporary escape versus actually spending time planning a permanent one? Is that life happening to you? Or is that life catching up to you? Hard truth number 7. You are born looking like your parents, but you die looking like your decisions. What do I mean by that? What I mean is you don't get to choose your parents. You don't get to choose where you're born. You don't get to choose the religion that's taught to you. You don't get to choose the school you go to oftentimes, right? You don't get to choose those things. And because you don't get to choose those things, like namely your parents, where you come from, and their belief system that gets downloaded into you originally, right? That's how you're born. But the good news is eventually you become an adult and you get to make decisions on your own terms. And at the end of the day, a lot of life is not learning, it's unlearning things that you believe to be true arbitrarily because they were simply given to you, right? So now the question becomes, because I understand that I was born looking like my parents, but ultimately how my life goes is based upon the decisions that I make. What decisions am I making to become a better version of myself? Because at the end of the day, I heard this quote and it changed my life forever. And I don't know if it's true, but it feels like it's true. On your last day on earth, the person that you are will get to meet the person that you could have become. Woo. When I heard that the first time, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Can you imagine all those dreams, those visions, the things that you said you were going to do that you never did, and you get to see a movie of the man or the woman who did everything that you thought about. All the times you snoozed, all the times you didn't go to the gym, all the time you didn't do what you said you were going to do. There's a version of you that you get to see. Well, what would my life have looked like if I did all that stuff? And they said that, well, matter of fact, they didn't say the last day on earth. They said the definition of hell, right, is that, right? Getting to see who you were supposed to become. So ask yourself, when I think about who I'm supposed to become, am I willing to let that pass me by just because I'm not willing to decide, commit, and make the decisions I'm supposed to make? Continuing to not make the decisions that you're supposed to make, that you commit to or say that you commit to, is a version of self-disrespect. And your self-respect has to be greater than your feelings. Because y'all probably heard me say this before, but if you had a meeting with a friend scheduled and 5 minutes after they were supposed to meet with you, they said, can't make it, not really feeling up to it today. No other reason, just like, I'm not really feeling it. You would feel disrespected. So tell me how it's not self-disrespect when you told yourself up front that you were going to go to the gym, that you were going to invest money, that you were going to save money, that you were going to build wealth, or whatever it is that you told yourself. And then because you didn't feel like it or because something came up, you just didn't make that commitment to yourself. You didn't keep that commitment with yourself. How do you expect other people to keep commitments to you when you don't even keep commitments to yourself? Right? So I'll leave you with that. All right. Hard truth number 8. Y'all not going to like this one because y'all love a good side hustle, don't y'all? Y'all love a good side hustle. If you are not making at least 6 figures in your business or your career for that matter, well, I'll say business because if you're in your career and maybe your upside is capped, maybe the side hustle is your way of like getting out of that, but whatever, I'll get to that. If you're not making at least 6 figures in your business, you should not have another business. You should not have competing focuses if you're not making at least 6 figures. Now, I was going to say 7, but like then y'all really would have been like, okay, this guy's tripping. He's out of touch or something. But if you're not making at least 6 figures, you do not need to focus on anything else. Now, what you're going to say is, well, isn't that contradictory to the whole logic of one stream of income is too close to zero, multiple streams of income? Well, y'all have misconstrued that logic. The logic behind that is you're supposed to become world-class at one thing. And then once you do that, you use that income to buy other income. You use the excess income because you're a good steward over your finances now, and you use that to buy income. You don't have 7 hustles and 7 different things going on because then you'd be burnt out and you'd be all over the place, right? So if you're not making at least 6 figures, what that means is you need more skills for the current thing that you're doing. Then because here's the thing, if you're not making six figures, there's not going to be enough margin to do much, invest, save, whatever. Now, granted, like I said, no sense of entitlement. You should be doing something and limit your lifestyle accordingly. But at the end of the day, some problems can be solved with just making a little bit more money. I remember like it was yesterday, I had not several, but some clients in the past, we went through their budget, went through their cash flow, and they just knew I was going to rip their expenses apart. And the truth was, their expenses weren't the issue. They just needed to make some more money. That's it. They just needed to make some more money. And so when you make a little bit more money, a lot of that goes away. So same thing with your business, right? Like, or your career. You don't need to be distracted in a bunch of different areas until you are making decent income. Then once you're making decent income, it's like, maybe I double down on the skills to make more money, or maybe now that I'm making enough to have enough margin, I can diversify and put money in other places. But a lot of times you're spreading yourself too thin in the name of thinking you need to do more. But elevation is much more about subtraction than it is addition. In order to go up, there's things you got to give up. Am I talking to somebody? I don't know. I mean, I know I'm technically talking to myself on the camera, but am I talking to somebody? Hard truth number 9. Most passive income is not passive. There are just varying degrees of active, right? A lot of what people are calling passive on the internet is not passive. And to my last point about making six figures, at least, right? Most people are trying to chase making money while they sleep when they haven't figured out how to make money while they're awake. Clip that up. Like, you have to focus on becoming a person of value first. That's the prerequisite. Then when you do that, you can find investments that are as passive as they possibly can be so that you're not putting that much time to it. But most investments, the reason why people end up getting caught up in so much stuff is they think that they're doing something passive, and they're not. And I'm going to do an episode on this about an Amazon store that I purchased that I thought was passive. And the reason why I decided to give it up is because it wasn't passive, right? It wasn't passive. I'm gonna go into. I've been sitting on that one for a while. All right. Most things aren't passive. They're varying degrees of active. So do the due diligence to make sure you have the capacity, because what's going to happen is you're going to have your job or have your business. You're going to see this shiny ball, like start a passive car rental business. Does that even sound passive? Start a passive income Airbnb business. Does that even sound passive? Can you put systems in place to make it more passive than you running it yourself? Of course. But it inherently isn't passive out the gate. And even when you do get it all systemed up, it's not going to be 100% passive, but you can just make an assessment on if the level of passive that it is aligns with the capacity that you desire to have. All right. So I kind of struggled between what number 10 would be because, trying to narrow it down. But I went back and forth between one, but I'm going to pick this one. And maybe I'll share the other one as a bonus or something. But passion as a means of making money or a career path is overrated. Passion is overrated. Yes, there are some people like athletes or entertainers who quote unquote get to live out their passion, so to speak, right? But for the vast majority of us, you're better off getting a high income skill set, doing something that other people don't want to do and are willing to pay handsomely for, right? Making the money, taking the excess money by doing things that most people don't want to do, and then investing in your passion or giving yourself the freedom and autonomy to do your passion because you're making enough money elsewhere. Oftentimes when you try to make your passion your career path, you end up putting pressure on your passion, which then leads to resentment because now your passion, you're relying on it to pay your bills, and then you're struggling and you're associating the struggle with your passion. And then you feel less of yourself because it's like, why isn't my passion not paying my bills? Does that mean I'm not good enough? If I'm not good enough, I don't like it anymore. And it creates this spiral when all that could have went out the window if you just did music because you like doing music. If you just played a sport because you wanted to have fun and you like to exercise, right? Now, the crazy thing is, when you have the bandwidth and the space to do that, you end up getting good at it because you just can do it without the pressure. And then because you get good at it, you might be good enough to get paid for it. But when you start out that way, you put the pressure on it, your bills and your livelihood is relying upon it, that's when it gets tricky. That's when it gets tricky. So passion is overrated. Profit is what you need to aim for. How can I do something that is profitable, gives me the excess margin to invest in my passion or do what I love or give me the time to have fun and enjoy my passion so that I'm not relying upon the passion to pay my bills? So those are my 10 harsh truths that will set you free. There's probably more, but 10's a nice round number. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know in the comments if you like episodes like this. Of course, make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you share this episode with a friend. We're going to start doing more giveaways on the channel. So you got to be active. You got to be subscribed. And if you're listening, I got to turn this into a podcast. I went into full Mel and the Money Show mode. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, let me know. Would you guys want me to add the Financial Freedom Fast Lane on audio podcasts as well? Let me know. I just might do that. Anyways, until next time, remember, freedom is for sale if you're willing to pay the price. Peace.